Hi guys, happy Tuesday. Hope you're all okay and ready to smash another day of online learning. So I've got English again for you and we are developing our understanding of poetry. So today's lesson we're going to use two graphic organisers to help us get our head around what we know and what we are going to learn about poetry. So let me share the screen with you so we can see what our what for the day is. So we are on this lovely Wednesday, which is technically our halfway point for the week. By the end of today, we'll be halfway because it's only a 4-day week. So we are going to go into our purple box set books today. So I'd like you to just pause for me, write these three things from the top. Wednesday, the 24th of February, English and poetry, and write them in your neatest handwriting for me in the at the top of your page, and then underline it with a ruler. Okay, so we are today going to identify key features of a range of poetry. So we're looking at not just one kind of poem, but literally poetry in general, by practicing some new learning so that we can use this knowledge to then write some of our own poems. Okay, and we are in our box set. So I'd like you to take a pause and maybe talk to somebody or just have a little think about what you know about poems and what you know about poetry. Okay, what do you know about poems and what do you know about poetry? So just pause and have a think for me. Okay, so you've had a chance to have a think. And what we're going to do is we're going to take all of that we already know about poetry and we're going to put it down on the page so we can see that as we go through, we can look back at this and see how much we've learned. Okay, so we're going to use what's called a circle map. And this is what it looks like, and it helps us to see what we already know about a topic and how we know it. So this is what we're going to write in our book. So I'd like you to write down circle map, what do I already know? And then I would like you to stop there for me because I want to show you on my screen what I've done. Okay, so we are going to make a note of what we already know about poetry. And to begin, we are going to whatever's left of your page. I would like you to find roughly halfway. Don't worry about finding it exactly. So I think halfway is about here. I'm just going to sneeze. Bless me. Sorry, that was very dramatic. It was a long pause. So poetry in the middle, and then I'm going to draw my circle afterwards because otherwise I don't know if I can fit the word poetry in my circle. I'm just very lightly drawing a very small circle. Okay, and then I'm going to draw a slightly bigger circle. And if you have a pen license, I would love you to do this in pencil for me because mine is ending up looking pretty ugly. So what's going to go inside is what we already know about poetry. So my turn, I know that a lot of them rhyme. I know that they have verses, and we'll learn a little bit more about this because I'll tell you actually. I know about their verses, which are called stanzas. I know about Green Eggs and Ham by Sam I Am, so Dr. Seuss. And that's linking to the rhyming, so green eggs and ham. I'm just writing this all around the edge. I also know about Robert Louis Stevenson. Do I know any other poems? There's a poem called If by Rudyard Kipling, which is a nice poem. So I'm going to write Rudyard Kipling as well. I think it might be double P. I'm not 100% sure. So these are some of the things that I know. Yours will look very different because you don't know the same things about poetry as me. You don't know the same things as you don't know the same things about poetry as your mastery partner in school. Okay, we all know lots of different things, and so these will all look very different. And you can see mine's pretty blank. Okay, because before I looked at teaching this topic, there were some things that I've learned whilst learning about this topic in order to teach it to you. But I'm not going to put those things on because I didn't originally know them. When I was at lesson number 1, I didn't know these things either. So these are some of the things that I do know. And I'm going to, and then as we go through and learn more about this topic, I will learn more. So the circle map on the screen, when I showed you the one on the slides, had a square around the edge. But I'm thinking we don't need to draw that square because the edges of our book can be that square, okay? And around here, we are going to write down where we know these things from. So green eggs and ham, I know that from Dr. Seuss books. I also know it from like the Cat in the Hat film, because it's not necessarily the actual green eggs and ham as such, but it has a link there. So Cat in the Hat film, I'll put that one down. And I also know some of these things from school. If by Rudyard Kipling, I know from Mrs. Tildesley. So I'm going to add that down there as well. And so these are, and I also know Robert Louis Stevenson from the internet, maybe. So I'm going to add that. So around the other, I want you to add anything, any way or method that you had for knowing and finding this information. Okay, I am back, and we are now going to add to our learning. Okay, so for my turn, first of all, I'm going to show you how I'm going to look at this poem and what I'm going to take from it. And then it's going to be your turn to have a little go at taking notes from poems. So I'm going to read it first of all. Mr. Mackey said, write a poem about someone near to you, dear to you, a pet, a family member, a friend. Funny, I thought. How pets come first. That's your homework, said Mr. Mackey. And the whole class groaned, except me. But poems are hard, sir. Poems are boring. Poems are for old people. Poems are for boring old people. No one reads poetry unless their teacher makes them. You will not be feeling like this by the end of year 4. I love poetry. So, well, I hope you won't. So, as I read through that, I'm going to take a note of some of these things, and I'm going to think about them because I'm going to write them down on my new graphic organizer in a minute. So I think that I can see that each line starts with a capital letter here. And it's not one line per sentence. Mr. Mackey said is not a full sentence. So you can split your sentence into different lines. Because if you have a look, Mr. Mackey said, write a poem about someone near to you, dear to you, a pet, a family member, a friend. That's 8 lines just to do one normal sentence, okay? So it doesn't have to be a sentence per line. And this one doesn't rhyme. So there's 2 things that I've noticed. 3 things because of the capital letters. I've also noticed that it's speech. So it's telling the story, but just not in normal sentences, not in normal lines. So they would be the things that I would be making a note of. Okay, and now it's going to be your turn. I want you to have a little read of this, and I'd like to see if there are any more things that you can pull out. Okay, so I'll read it, and then I want you to make a note of, on a scrap piece of paper, anything that can add to what I found here. What else can you see? Any questions? Hand shot up. Does it have to rhyme, sir? No. How do we start, sir? With whatever comes into your head. Just let it out. Don't hold back. Don't stop yourselves. Don't censor yourselves. Let your words flow like a mountain stream, like a babbling brook, like a raging river, like a tidal wave, a tsunami, like a cosmic wave moving between galaxies. Can you notice in that one, in that part? It's from the same, it's all from chapter 1 of Cloud Busting, that book. What can you see there? Okay, let's compare. So again, I can still see those capital letters, but this time I can see some short sentences, like we have in narratives, we can have some short sentences. I can also see some repetition. Don't hold back. Don't stop yourselves. Don't censor yourselves. We're repeating that don't. And we're also then repeating after let your words flow. like a mountain stream, like a babbling brook, like a raging river, like a tidal wave, like. We're repeating like as well. So there's repetition. I might make a note of that. What is like? Like is a what? A simile. So there's some imagery in there as well, because you are imagining how your words might flow. They might flow like a mountain stream and like a brook and a river and a tidal wave. So there's lots of imagery in there too. So they are some things that you might want to have made a note of on your jotter page. Okay, so it's your turn again. So make some more notes in your jotter. I'm going to read it for you in a second, but first of all, this is a different chapter. So it's a different poem. This chapter is chapter number 5. So the chapter that we just looked at was called Mr. Mackey Said, and it's quite a long one. This is from chapter 5, which is poems posted around the school by you know who, and it is, no, it's not, ignore me. It's chapter 3, and it's called Facing the Truth with Haikus. Haikus. Where have I heard that before? I heard it in yesterday's lesson because Miss Nook said we're going to look at those in year 4 for our poetry topic. So this is something that we're going to look at in more detail. But for now, what do we notice? Before I even read, what do you notice about these? I notice that they're split into sections or paragraphs or verses of 3 lines. So it's 3 lines per verse. And a verse is a stanza. Okay, in poetry, we call them stanzas. They're like a paragraph, but in poetry, they're called a stanza. And each of these is exactly 3 lines long. Okay, let's see if we notice anything else. Mr. Mackey said, "Today, you lucky people, we're doing haikus." What's one of them, sir? Poems to stir the senses. Plus, they're very short. A mere 3 lines long. Just 17 syllables. Simple pimple, right? 3 lines made up of words which are 5 syllables, then 7, then 5. Haikus, Alex groaned. What a waste of time and space. I didn't think so. Okay, so before we even read that, we could see that this one had verses or stanzas which were 3 lines long. Compare that to this one. This is not split into verses and stanzas. This is just one whole long poem. So that's something else that we know about poetry. There are stanzas, which can be the whole poem, or just 3 lines. Okay, and this one doesn't rhyme either. So what have we got here? Your turn again. I think this is the last one that we're going to look at. But we are just looking at and experiencing these different poems so that we can draw on this knowledge to help us understand that there are lots of different kinds of poems. Okay, so your turn. This is Windy Nights by Robert Louis Stevenson. Before as well. Whenever the moon and stars are set, whenever the wind is high, all night long in the dark and wet, a man goes riding by. Late in the night when the fires are out, why does he gallop and gallop about? Whenever the trees are crying aloud and ships are tossed at sea, by on the highway, low and loud, by at the gallop he goes. That was not right at all, Miss Nook. I'm going to go again, year 4. Let me take that second stanza again. Whenever the trees are crying aloud and the ships are tossed at sea, by on the highway, low and loud, by at the gallop goes he. By at the gallop he goes, and then by he comes back at the gallop again. Okay, so have a little thing, other than my mishap in there, reading it wrong. What do you notice about this one? Okay, for this one, I notice that, sorry, I saw the postman come in. So I noticed that there are rhymes in here, but it's not the end of every line that rhymes. It's not set and high and wet and by that rhyme. It's alternating ones. So it's set and wet and high and by. So it's rhyming, but not the end of every sentence or line. It's not even a sentence, not the end of every line rhymes. So even when we do have a rhyming poem, they're all very, very different. And also, this is not something that you notice as such about what you can see, but it's about what you can hear. With poetry and poems, some of them are made to be read in a certain way, almost like a song. So the reason that I read it again is because I noticed that that part that I read didn't rhyme properly. So I'm going to make a note of it in my map in a second, but it's not even just what we can see, it's how we hear it as well. So poems sometimes are written to be read in quite an upbeat and tuneful way, whereas others are written to just tell a story, like the first ones we looked at, just tell a story exactly like a narrative would, but just written in a slightly different way. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to get all of that information into a bubble map. So just copy this down for me on the next clean page because we've used the other one up for the circle map. Right, bubble map, what do I now know? Or what do I know now? Okay, I just want you to do the writing. I do not want you to do any of the bubbles yet. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to do a bubble map about what we have learned. And hopefully it will be a little bit bigger and a little bit more information than the circle map that we just did. So I'm again going to go about halfway down the page. And again, I'm going to do my writing before my bubble. So I'm going to write poetry roughly in the middle of my page. Does not matter if it's not exactly in the middle. Okay, and then I'm going to get my ruler, which is in my bag, and I'm going to draw a line. In fact, I'm going to draw the line afterwards as well. I'm going to do the writing first and then the lines. So one of the things that we knew, that we learned today, is that some poems rhyme and some don't rhyme. So I'm going to write these next to each other. And they're kind of in note form because I won't be able to fit a whole bubble around it if I try and do it as sentences. And so then this is going to be one of my bubbles to show that poems rhyme and they don't rhyme. So that's one thing I've learned about poems today. I've also learned that a stanza equals a paragraph because that compares it to something I already know. I already know about paragraphs. So comparing a stanza and a paragraph makes me understand it a little bit more because I'm using something I already know. Paragraph. And in brackets, I'm going to put verse as well. They are some keywords. Going to draw a circle around that and draw myself a line. We also learned that there can be some with 3 lines. I'm going to draw a circle around that. And then next to that bubble, because it's the same kind of thing, I'm also going to write a whole poem in one, because to me that means like that first one where the whole poem comes as one chapter. So in Mackie says, you see my annotations, but this is all one long poem. There is no part of that where it's separated. Okay, it's all one long poem. So whole poem in one is what makes sense to me. You write whatever makes sense to you. And I'm again going to then draw my circle and my line afterwards. Because I'm drawing my lines as I go, I can see where I've got lots of room. What else do we know? So we know that they rhyme and they don't rhyme. We know that some have 3 lines, some have a whole poem in one. I'm also going to put that they are read in different ways. I'm going to put in brackets here, some are sort of tuneful and some are just read in a normal voice. And that is quite a big bubble this time. So I'm going to leave it there. Actually, no, I'm going to put capital letters. Can start each line, and I think most of them do. Most poems have capital letters at the start of each line. Also, one sentence can equal lots of lines. we also had some repetition and some imagery, and I am going to stop because I don't want to give you all of the answers. But we did also have, and hopefully you made note of this as we went through, we had imagery, we had repetition, we had lots of similes and things like that. And we had short sentences. So just have a little think, go back through the video if you need to look at the ones that we looked at on the slides, and just remember what we saw in all of those poems, and hopefully you will have a map that looks like this, and it tells us all of the things that we've learned today about poetry, okay? And that's built on what we learned, or what we already knew in our circle map, okay? And hopefully yours will be more full than mine, because there are at least 3 or 4 things that I could add that I've not mentioned. So you can magpie some of mine, but also think back to the notes that you made during the lesson. Okay, and that is our work for today. Well done, Year 4. I hope you are as excited as I am to start reading. In fact, today, I think, Wednesday, hopefully it's today that we will be reading our Values Driver of Cloud Busting by Malorie Blackman. Okay, it's a wonderful book. I really love it. And so we're going to start using this book even more and starting to read it as well. I'm very, very excited. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow for another installment of our English.